Okay, be honest with me for a second. You've got around 500,000 saved, and some days it feels solid. Other days you wonder if you're kidding yourself. Maybe your buddy dropped his number last week, and you did that quiet little comparison in your head. Am I actually ahead, or just telling myself I am? Let's settle it right now. No sugarcoating, just the real numbers. So where does 500,000 actually land? The Federal Reserve tracks this, and for households in their late 50s and early 60s, the average retirement balance is about $537,000, so you're right around there, maybe a hair under. Here's the thing, though. Average isn't really the number you want. The median for that same group is only 185,000. That's a massive gap, and it's there because a handful of people with huge balances drag the average way up. Median is the real middle. Half the people have more, half have less. So when the gap is that big, it's telling you something. Most people your age aren't anywhere close to 500,000. Here's the blunt version. Of every household in this country with a retirement account at all, only about 9% have 500,000 or more in it. 9%. So if that's roughly you, you're not just doing okay. You're in a pretty small group. Doesn't feel that way, though, does it? You look at the balance, and the thought that shows up isn't, wow, I'm in the top 10%. It's more like, I should probably be further along than this by now. That's a very common thing to feel while sitting on more money than almost everyone you know. All right, so you're ahead of the pack. But that was never really the question, was it? What you actually want to know is what that pile of money turns into once it has to act like a paycheck. Let's do the math together. The usual rule of thumb is pulling out about 4% a year, which is meant to give your money a decent shot at lasting a long retirement. 4% of 500,000 is 20,000 a year. Split that over 12 months and you're at about $1,667 a month coming out of savings. $1,667. 30 years of saving, and it hands you less than $2,000 a month? That's the part that stings the first time you see it. But you're probably not living on savings alone. Most people your age also have Social Security coming in, and right now the average check is around $2,083 a month. Stack that with the $1,667 from savings, and you're at roughly $3,750 a month before taxes even touch it. $3,750. Sounds fine if you live somewhere cheap, sounds tight if you don't, and we haven't gotten anywhere near your actual bills yet. Before we do, there's a question sitting underneath all of this that changes everything. How long does this money have to last? That 4% rule isn't magic. It's built around a long retirement, and here's what surprises people. Research on middle-class households found the median age people actually retire is 62. Not 65, not 67, 62. And often that's not even by choice. It's health, or a layoff, or a job that quietly disappeared out from under them. Those same households expect to spend about 26 years retired. 26 years. That's longer than a lot of people's careers were. So this isn't money that needs to get you through a nice long vacation. It's money that has to show up every single month for a quarter century. And here's what makes 26 years genuinely tricky. Prices don't sit still while you're retired. Even at a modest 3% a year, the cost of your life roughly doubles over 25 years. The grocery bill you're paying today is not the grocery bill you'll be paying at 80. Your Social Security does adjust for inflation, which helps, but the money coming out of your savings has to keep up on its own. That's why the instinct a lot of people have the day they retire, get it all into cash where nothing can happen to it, tends to backfire. Sure, cash may be safe from the market, but it's not safe from prices. There's also the timing thing nobody warns you about. If the market takes a serious dive in your first few years of retirement, right when you're starting to pull money out, that does far more damage than the same dive would do 10 years later. You're selling shares while they're down just to pay your bills, so those shares are gone. They don't get to recover with everything else. Same average returns over the same retirement, completely different outcome, purely based on when the bad years happen to show up. Now let's talk about the part that shrinks your number before you ever see it. Taxes. if most of your $500,000 is sitting in a traditional 401k or IRA, none of that money has been taxed yet. When you pull that $1,667 out every month, it counts as ordinary income. So does a chunk of your Social Security check, depending on your total income for the year. Your actual spendable money is smaller than the math we just did. How much smaller depends on your situation, but the point stands that $3,750 was never really $3,750. Let's add debt, because this is the part nobody wants to bring up. People in your general age range are carrying the highest average credit card debt of any generation right now, close to $9,600, plus car loans averaging around $27,800. And here's the annoying part. Your car payment doesn't retire just because you do. If you've got a few $100 a month going toward debt, that's money already spoken for before you've bought a single grocery. A $500 monthly payment is $6,000 a year that isn't yours to spend on anything else. And this is exactly where that word average starts to fall apart on you. Knowing you're near the average balance tells you where you stand next to everyone else. It tells you nothing about what your money actually has to carry. Picture two guys, both 62, both with exactly $500,000. First guy paid off his house, drives a car he owns outright, and his fixed bills run about $2,000 a month. That $3,750 covers his life with room to breathe. Second guy has $1,100 left on his mortgage, a $450 car payment, and a credit card balance he keeps meaning to deal with. His fixed costs are closer to $3,200 before he's bought a single grocery. Same balance, same Social Security check. One of them is comfortable. The other one is sitting in the parking lot thinking, okay, what can wait until next month? And the number on the statement told you absolutely nothing about which guy is which. Now here's the one thing that lands on both of them, whether they planned for it or not: health care. And this is where a lot of retirement plans quietly start leaking. Fidelity puts out an estimate every year, and right now a single person retiring at 65 should expect to spend around $172,000 on health care over the rest of retirement. That's after tax, and it doesn't even include long-term care. For a couple, that number jumps to around $345,000 combined. Spread that out monthly, and it's real money on top of whatever Medicare costs you. And Medicare isn't free. The basic Part B premium alone runs a little over $200 a month in 2026, and that's before you add supplemental coverage, dental, vision, or the prescriptions Medicare decides not to cover. And remember what I said about people actually retiring at 62? Medicare doesn't start until 65. So if you stop working early, you're covering private insurance out of pocket for 3 years. That's not a small line item. That's one of the biggest reasons people who could technically afford to retire at 62 end up gutting it out until 65 anyway. So let's put it all together, honestly. $500,000 gets you about $3,750 a month between savings and Social Security, before taxes take their cut, before debt payments, before health care costs, before rent or property taxes, before all the regular stuff that doesn't care that your paycheck stopped. That's not meant to scare you. It's just the real version. The point of walking through it like this isn't to make $500,000 feel smaller. It's to make sure that number actually does its job instead of sitting there looking impressive on a statement. So what do you actually do with all this? A few things really move the needle. Waiting on Social Security is probably the biggest one. Every year you hold off past your full retirement age, up to 70, permanently bumps your check by about 8%. That's for life, and it adjusts with inflation. There's almost nothing else in retirement planning that hands you a guaranteed raise like that. Now, waiting isn't automatically right for everybody. Your health matters. Whether you need the money right now matters. But it's worth knowing exactly what you're trading away when you claim early. Debt is the other big lever, and it's the one you actually control. Think back to those two guys. The only real difference between them was what they owed. Knocking out that credit card balance or car loan before you retire helps your monthly cash flow more than almost any investment move could, mainly because it's certain. You don't need the market to cooperate. Every payment you eliminate is a permanent raise. If you're still working, the catch-up rules are worth knowing. Once you're 50, you can put an extra $7,500 into your 401k on top of the regular limit. And if you're 60 to 63, there's an even bigger one now, over 11,000. Those last few working years can move your number more than people expect. Healthcare has its own levers too. If you've still got access to an HSA before you retire, that money goes in tax-free and comes out tax-free for medical expenses, which takes a real bite out of that Fidelity number. And if you're retiring before 65, price out private coverage now instead of finding out the hard way later. Where you live matters more than people think, too. Property taxes, insurance, everyday costs, they swing wildly by location. $500,000 stretches very differently depending on where you're sitting when you spend it. And that cuts both ways. Moving somewhere cheaper is a real benefit, but so is staying put somewhere you already know people, already know a good mechanic, and aren't paying to rebuild your whole life from scratch at 65. Here's the thing worth remembering next time you run into a benchmark like this one. Being ahead isn't just about how big your account is. Sometimes it's about needing less from it every month. Somebody with lower bills and no debt can make $500,000 go further than somebody with a bigger balance and a pile of monthly obligations. That's not the consolation prize. That's actually the better way to measure whether you're ready. So before you go, here's a quick way to sanity check any retirement number you come across, this one included. Is it an average or a median? Because those tell completely different stories. What age group and household type is it even describing? Does it include your house or just liquid accounts? And is it before or after tax? And then the real question. What would this number actually pay you every month? What bills and debt would that money have to cover? How long does it have to last? And what's the one thing you could still change, whether that's timing, spending, or health care, that would make the biggest difference? 500,000 is a solid, real number. It puts you ahead of most people your age, and it's more than 9 out of 10 households have managed. What it actually does for you depends less on the balance itself and more on what it has to cover every single month for however many months you end up needing it. If you want more of these, the kind that get you the real number instead of the version that just makes you feel better or worse for a minute, stick around and subscribe. That's really the whole point of this channel, understanding the math before it turns into a surprise. Though there's one thing worth mentioning before you go, because it undercuts almost everything we just walked through. All of this assumed your 500,000 slowly gets smaller over those 26 years. Money goes out, balance comes down, that's the deal. And for most people, that's exactly what happens. But not for everybody. There are retirees sitting on the same kind of balance, collecting the same kind of Social Security check, not working a job, and their number is somehow bigger at 70 than it was the day they retired. Same math we just did, completely different direction. What they're doing differently is worth a closer look, and that's where we're going next.